Good morning. Okay, so I've got a few minutes just to talk to you a little bit about the work of Elim Missions. But before I do that, you'll see the slide behind me, just explaining something of who we are as a movement. We are part of an Elim church. This is an Elim church, part of a network of churches across the UK. So if you're here for the very first time, this morning you're meeting with maybe over about 420 Elim churches that are scattered across the UK and are gathering to worship Jesus this morning. So we're part of a bigger family. And so I think that's one of the things I think is really important for us to grasp, because sometimes we can get so bogged down in our own little world that we lose sight of the fact that we're part of something so much bigger. Now, the Elim world is even bigger than the churches that are just in the UK. We have global partners across the world, totaling around, I think it's about 4,000 different churches or so. Over 300,000 people who would be connected with Elim in some way across the globe. So just some figures that kind of help put into context just what we're a part of here on the Isle of Wight. Now, there are four things that we as a movement are really prioritising over the next 10 years. It's called Vision 2020, but this is extending really into shaping everything that we do. You'll see here that the first thing is making disciples. The only reason we exist as a church, as God's people, is to make disciples. It is to be a disciple and to make disciples. Take that out, and actually, the other four are meaningless. The other three are meaningless, because that sets the context for everything that we do. We aren't just busy sending out good workers or humanitarian workers, whether it's in the UK or overseas. We're sending out disciple makers. So there's a forensic phrase that every contact leaves a trace. Have you ever heard that? And something about the way that we live as God's people, I think that every single contact, every single place that we step into should leave a trace of the kingdom, a kingdom touch, because of our presence there. And so the starting point is always discipleship. So before I'm an international missions director, before I do anything for Elim, before I do anything else, I've got to have this posture and this understanding that I am a disciple of Jesus before anything. And out of that sense of following Jesus, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a friend, I'm a colleague. But the role of the place of discipleship shapes all of those. So Elim, we're focusing on discipleship. Because then I think if we get a real grasp of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, then we're going to get growing churches. You see, I'm not talking about growing churches that are simply about shuffling the pack. You know, we've all heard of those, haven't we? Like, we just shuffle it around a little bit, and one church seems to grow, and others just seem to go. And all that's really happened is that people have moved around a bit. Now, I understand that people move around because that's what happens. Like, people, that's people, isn't it? I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. But actually, we can't count that necessarily as growing churches. It's just shifting the pack. It's just shifting the family around, relocating family. So actually, the kind of churches that we want to see growing are people who are encountering Jesus and making disciples of Jesus. So wouldn't it be amazing that over the next 10 years, as this Elim church begin to gear around that whole sense of making disciples, actually the kind of growth that you experience is messy. Is messy growth. Because actually when people are encountering Jesus, it's going to create a whole lot of mess. Because people don't come to Jesus perfect. People come to Jesus broken. And so that means that we have to be following Jesus to help other people know how to follow Jesus. And the process of discipleship happens, and people begin to encounter Jesus in very fresh and real ways. And then so we'll get growing churches, then I think we'll get developing leaders. Because if you get disciples, you're going to get leaders. People who are bringing influence and helping other people grow. And then finally, reaching nations, which is the bit that I get the privilege of having responsibility for. And over the next few minutes, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what God is doing in and through Elim missions across the globe. I mentioned just a little bit earlier, Elim world is made up of various various elements. We have our global partners, which I mentioned. They're people who are Elim Pentecostal Kenya, for instance, would be one of our global partners. They came out of Elim UK. There's a very close link between Elim UK and Elim Kenya and other Elim works across the globe. Then we've also got partners who have come into contact with Elim, and they like what we do, and they like who we are. They identify with our DNA, and they want to get involved in mission with us, and therefore they identify with us, and they become a global partner. They're saying, we want to partner with you, what God is doing across the globe. And then we've also got our missionaries. Now we have 73 missionaries working in over 50 countries who are sold out for the great news, good news and the Great Commission, who are seeking to make disciples wherever they are. Now, 11 of those missionaries are what we call UK-based missionaries. That's exactly what it is. They're based in the UK, they have jobs in the UK, they have families in the UK, they attend church in the UK, but they connect with a work overseas and they go regularly. So whether that's 2, 3, 4 times a year, and invest into the life of the people that they're connected with overseas. Then we have the remaining amount of missionaries are long-term missionaries. They're in country, they're living and working and breathing culture and life and mission in doing all kinds of different things, ranging from orphanages to children's work to working in running schools to planting churches to doing all manner of stuff. Because actually a missionary isn't just one type. You see, there's something about the call to mission that is both local and global. And we'll get to some of that in a moment as to why I think that mission we need to think a bit broader about mission. Because God is not simply about sending one type. He wants to send each and every one of us in the unique way that he's made us and designed us to have kingdom impact wherever it is that we find ourselves serving and working and living. Just so happens that 62 of our missionaries are doing that, what we would call overseas cross-cultural mission into some various parts of the world. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about those. But before I do that, I'd like you to watch this video, which is entitled State of the World. State of the World. I don't think
Jesus told us 2,000 years ago that our mission is to go and make disciples of all nations. He also promised us that only after we accomplish that task will we receive the blessing of his return. So, how are we doing accomplishing our mission? To answer that, let's classify the 7 billion people on the earth today into 3 groups. Let's start with the Christians. About 33% of the world's population would identify itself as Christian. We call this segment of the population World C. C for Christian. It's important to remember that not all of the people that fall into World C are true believers in Christ. They merely identify themselves as Christian because of nominal belief in Jesus, or because they live in a country where everyone is considered Christian, so they would do the same. Next, there's the 38% of the world that has access to the gospel but has chosen not to follow Jesus. They have Bibles in their language, churches nearby, friends or co-workers who are potentially Christians, or access to other Christian resources in their language. These people have access to the good news, but just haven't acted on it yet. This segment of the population is called World B. That leaves us with 29% of the world, just over 1 out of every 4 people on this planet who not only have never heard of Jesus, they have no chance of hearing the good news of Jesus Christ. They have no access to the gospel, no Bibles, no churches, no believers nearby, no chance to learn about Jesus. We call that 29% World A. Now on to missionaries. Only 1 out of every 1,800 Christians in World C decides to serve as a cross-cultural missionary. So, we can pull 400,000 missionaries out of that World C population. That's our total cross-cultural missionary force worldwide. Did you know that 72% of all our missionaries are going to World C? That's right. The vast majority of the missionaries being sent out are going to the people of the world that have Bibles and established churches. 25% of the missionaries are sent to World B, where there is already some access to the church and to the Bible. That leaves only 3% of the total missionary force to handle all of World A, the section of the population without any chance of hearing about Jesus. 29% of the world has no way to hear the gospel, but we're sending only a tiny portion of our Christian workers to them. What about finances? Annually, all those Christians in World C earn a total of $42 trillion. And, together, they give about $700 billion to Christian causes each year. That includes everything: Christian nonprofits, churches, youth programs, missions, etc. Can you do the math? Less than 2% of Christian income is being given to Christ's causes. Out of that $700 billion given to all Christian causes, only $45 billion is given to missions specifically. That's a little over 6%. In fact, there is more money reported embezzled from the church each year than is given to missions. Remember those 400,000 missionaries? We have $45 billion to support them and their cross-cultural work. But how exactly is it allocated? Well, $39 billion goes to World C every year. Yep, 87% of that missions money is being spent in areas of the world that have Bibles and churches available. $5.4 billion, or 12%, goes to World B each year, those that have access to the gospel message but have rejected it. That leaves only $450 million, or 1% of all missions money going to World A, the least reached people of the world. To put that into perspective, annually Americans spend more money on Halloween costumes for their pets than gets sent to World A. To summarize, only 3% of our missionary force, armed with only 1% of missions giving, is going out to reach the 2 billion people who don't have access to the gospel. 2 billion people are still waiting for the good news of Jesus Christ. So here's a question for you. What are you going to do to change that?
I don't know what you think, having just watched that for the very first time, maybe. When I first watched it, I was struck by some of the statistics. It's particularly that one about that more money's embezzled in the church than is given to world missions. And it depends on which day, how I'm feeling on a day, whether I'm feeling really hopeful for the future that we can still accomplish this task, or feeling really depressed that there's still so much to do. I don't know about you, but it seems like a big job. And then the question at the end, well, what are you going to do? It kind of takes it from this grand story, doesn't it? This grand picture of the state of world missions and the state of the world, and brings it down to what are you going to do? Because we might not be able to influence what anybody else does, but we can certainly influence what we do. We can take responsibility for our part in what God is asking of us. We can't take responsibility for what God is asking for somebody else, but we can certainly take responsibility for what the Holy Spirit is asking and stirring in us. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we are doing as Elim Missions to try and to combat some of the stuff that's going on in the world and to reach people for Jesus. Can I take you to Cambodia? I'm going to jump on from this video just for the sake of time. And you can see here there's a picture of some of the girls that are in this picture. There's Linda Murray and Mandy Campbell, who are working our Elim Missions office. Be Free Cambodia. Be Free campaign is our campaign against human exploitation. Did you know that there are a frightening number of people who are trafficked each day? Not just overseas, but here in the UK. It's staggering. It's just unbelievable that this stuff still happens. The problem with this and the challenge of this is that the trafficking and human exploitation is a direct assault upon the nature and of our image being made in the image of God, of humanity. It strips people of dignity. It strips people of value. It's horrible. It's evil. It is wicked. And so there are a number of organisations who you will no doubt know who are doing an amazing work at rescuing people who are forced into slavery in all kinds of different ways. But let me just tell you about the work of Be Free. So since in the current year, basically what happens is that girls are identified through an organisation in Cambodia who rescue girls who are caught in slavery of various kinds. You can fill in the gaps. And they are then, some of those are then sent over to the work of Elim Cambodia and the Be Free Project, which is a year-long program of discipleship and training and healing for girls that have been destroyed by various kinds of abuse. So the girl in the middle, and I don't know whether we can just maybe drop the camera for now. That would be really helpful. Just so that this girl here, so Kim, she was sold at the age of 4 and sold to a family and suffered all kinds of things. Passed on to another family at the age of slightly older, who was just absolutely terrible. And so this lady here went through, was one of the first through the Be Free programs. She has come to faith in Christ. Her life has been restored. Her hope and dignity have been just brought back into this sense of being created in the image of God, a sense of purpose and identity and wholeness. And it's just an amazing result. Now, she currently manages the Be Free Project. So just like you might see some of the statistics. So this year there are 7 girls on this program. 3 have been baptized in August. 44 girls in total have gone through the Be Free program. I think it's amazing. In the last 6 years, 39 have made commitments to Christ. 3 of the new girls who are on this current intake are being discipled and actively pursuing Jesus and trying to explore what this looks like to follow him. And then 27 have been baptized, but this is the thing that's really striking for me. The last statement is that none of the girls that have been involved in this industry have returned back into the trade that they were once a part. It's like 100% success rate. Not all of them have come to faith, but all of them have not gone back to a life of abuse and suffering and slavery. I think that's a win. And that's some of the stuff that we're doing as Elim Mission. So this was pioneered by some of our missionaries called David and Esther Allen, who've recently just returned actually in August this year, who then trained up local people, nationals, to take on the work of Elim Cambodia, and it's beginning to flourish. And we'll get to a little bit more of the information about what's going on in Elim Cambodia in a moment. But just want you to get a picture of some of the diversity of what we do. This is probably the hardest project that we're involved in, just because some of the stories and the brokenness of people's lives. But it's one of the greatest joys when you see people's lives being transformed by Jesus, who are smiling and engaging in community and life and knowing hope that they didn't know before. And so this is some of the work that we do through Elim Cambodia. Let me just move on then to the next slide, which is again another one of our campaigns, which is called the Be Loved campaign. This really is a campaign through which all the work with children and that takes place across the globe. There is so much. I just encourage you to go to our Elim website and go and have a look and see just some of the things that we are doing. But let me tell you a little bit about James and Andrea, who are up there in the top corner, just there, James and Andrea. They had their hearts set on going to another country just a few months ago, but things just weren't really taking shape for them. So they began to explore, well, Lord, what might you be asking of us? And one of the things I love about our missionaries is that they're really flexible in terms of where they want to go. There's a real willingness to say, Lord, you've called me, I just want to go and serve you wherever you call. And so they began to explore a possibility in an opening within the Philippines, actually on an island of Coron. Several years ago, the island of Coron was battered by a hurricane. It was destroyed. Houses were flattened, roofs were ripped off, just infrastructure was destroyed. And so a couple of our churches, captivated by what the plight of the people on the island of Coron, and the need for educational establishments, began to develop a school in partnership with Living Epistle Church in Manila. And so they've planted a school there. Now, James and Andrea had just a desire really to go and make disciples. That was their remit. We want to go and tell people about Jesus. And so they've arrived in Quran just back in July. And they are beginning to embed in community, beginning to serve the people of Quran, work within the school, work within the community. Now, just 2 miles or so from the location of the school that they are working in and currently living in one of the dorms that's nearby, is a community that lives on the edges of a rubbish dump. And so they're working with people who really they don't have much. They don't have much opportunity, but they are going and they're serving this community, they're loving this community. They're running kids clubs and engaging with people, and they're seeing people come to faith in Jesus. You see, our world is so diverse, isn't it? We have people who have so much wealth, and yet if they don't know Jesus, they're as lost as the next man. And we have people who have so little and yet have found so much in Jesus, and they're beginning to see lives transformed. And they're the people that James and Andrea are working with in the Philippines. People who have found Jesus, who are also then taking their faith and their life to others in their community and seeing community come alive with the good news of Jesus. And then we've got here Rachel, who's and her husband Oscar, who have been working out in Guatemala, and they're working with a whole host of kids that are largely from a Catholic background, actually, and they're working with these children, and their sole desire is to see them encounter Jesus. They help them with homework, they help them with all kinds of education. It's a fun environment. But the objective is, how do we communicate Jesus to these children who have an understanding of who Jesus is because of their Catholic upbringing and their faith? They understand him, they know him, but they know of him, but they might not necessarily know him. And so they're trying to show and demonstrate what it looks like, not just to know about Jesus, but to actually know Jesus. And they're seeing some incredible things. They're running youth alphas. They've just recently had a young girl who's come to faith in Christ, a profession of faith. And just an incredible work going on in Guatemala. And then let me tell you about Cheryl and Novi. I won't give you the location of where this couple are based, but they're, again, sold out for Jesus. Anybody heard of YWAM and the DTS program? Yeah, so they went through YWAM and did a DTS. They met and got married. A real heart for a particular nation within Southeast Asia. And they run a children's home of I think there's over 20 kids in this children's home. Recently, they've just taken on some siblings who have been rejected by their parents for a number of reasons and varieties, but bringing them into this environment of family. And this isn't an orphanage, it's a home, it's a family. And so they treat the kids in this home as their own. And it's like, I'm really looking forward to going visiting next year and just being a part and seeing what they're doing, working with these children. And the whole thing is, it's not just preach at them, but they want to demonstrate something of the love of Christ. And the thing is, we can all preach the message, can't we? We can all tell people about Jesus, but the important thing is that people not only hear the words, but they see the transformation. And what they're seeing is this community of people who are being impacted by the gospel now. There's also another part of this which includes church planting, and recently it was a disaster that gave an opportunity for us as Elim Missions to be able to get involved and work with Cheryl and Ovi, and as a result a small group of people, but if you were to understand the nation in which we're referring to, it's not an easy nation in which to work in. It would be relatively closed. And so to see about 6 people respond to Jesus and now be discipled and take that message into their communities is amazing. Because the thing is, God isn't looking for the big. He's just looking for the available. He's looking for you and I to say, I might not have much, Jesus, but I'm going to go with what I have. And I love the fact that the kingdom the kingdom advance always seems to start on the margins. It's always on the margins. It's always in the places where you'd least expect it, or it's least likely to be found. And so what we're seeing here is God do some amazing things through people who have just said, "Here I am, Lord, send me." Let me tell you very quickly then about there's some of the church planting that's going on across the globe, because we're involved in all kinds of things. And so the pictures that you'll see from a recent trip to Honduras, where the guy in the green shirt is Pastor Luis. He's the leader of Elim, Honduras. For years, Honduras has been consisting of 2 churches, but they have a real desire to see churches planted in the nations, but also to send missionaries. So one of the things that I'm so enthused by is the fact that we can send people not simply from the UK, but send people from everywhere to everywhere. If we simply think about sending people from the UK or the US, then it's going to take a long time to reach the world, isn't it? It's going to take a long time to reach some of those 2 billion people that are yet to hear the good news. But if we have a mindset, say, well, actually, we could send and we could train people from everywhere to everywhere, imagine what could happen over the years to come. It'd be incredible, wouldn't it? And so Luis is leading Elim, Honduras into a new season of church planting. And then we've got Howard and Sue. Just this couple down here, Howard and Sue. They've been in Spain for about 30 years. Faithfully serving, and often just finding it so challenging to break through some of the strongholds that exist in Spain. But recently they've begun to see some movement within Spanish speakers, and they've begun to establish a Bible study that is working with Spanish speakers and teaching them about Jesus and the ways of Jesus, with the aim that eventually that group will become a church. And so they too are so desiring to engage with church planting in a way that is multiplying, not simply in terms of addition. So their big dream is to plant one church in every single state in Spain, which I think there's about 50 states in Spain. And so they're dreaming big and they're working hard, but they're captivated by the kingdom. They're captivated by the mission of Jesus. You see, I think Jesus calls us to be faithful. Calls us to be faithful, and out of our faithfulness, we will be fruitful. Because the 2 things go hand in hand. Faithful with what we have, and give it back to him and just see what he might do in and through a heart that is submitted to his. And so that's some of the work that we do in and through the church planting. But let me just tell you very quickly about Chamnap. Chamnap is he's the Elim, Cambodia's national leader. Now, David and Esther, as I said, mentioned, they returned back in August, and about 12 months ago, the work in Cambodia was handed over to Chamnap. Chamnap is an incredible man. He suffered with polio as a boy, and so has real trouble walking for any length of distance. But you know, this man, he's got an apostolic call upon his life. And so just to say that in the last month, Steve Kempton, who's there with him, the chap in the glasses, and one of our other missionaries called Barb Magali here, they've been out to Cambodia, and they've just trained 37 pastors on the first stage of training pastors to be church planters. So out of the 25 provinces in Cambodia, there are 12 provinces represented. Now, on my last trip to Cambodia a number of years ago, I had the privilege of being able to visit a little town called Kaip. Now, Kaip is the central point of one of the provinces, which is surrounded by 18 different other villages. I messaged Chamnap last night because I just said, Chamnap, what's going on? Tell me some more info, because I knew that they'd had this church planting seminar. Now, over just about 2.5 years ago, there was one church in Kaip. In December, this coming December, they are projecting to have one church in every village in the province of Kaip. One church in every village in that province. That will be the first province in Cambodia that will have a church in every village. So their dream, their goal, their strategy is one church and one pastor in every village, in every province of Cambodia. Do you know what? And I think they're going to do it. I think there might be a few bumps along the road. But you know what happens when we get intentional about the things that God has called us to? Amazing things can begin to happen. And so please pray for Chamnap. I've got time just to give one video or not? Yeah. Sure? Because I want, just while we're on the topic of church planting, anybody heard of the Elleringtons? Richard and Reggie Ellerington. Okay. They 7 years ago they moved to France, but I'm not going to tell you too much more of the story. I'm going to let Richard tell you. It'll just be a few minutes.
Hey guys, it's the Ginger Vicar here. The Balding Bishop's not with me today because we're in the southwest of France in a little town called Hossegor, which is the epicenter of the surf world. We've been here for the last 7 years planting a church for surfers called Surf Church. Stay tuned to the end of the video because we're going to be explaining what's happening next. And let me tell you, everything is about to change. In 2012, we arrived here in Hossegor in the van, kind of like this.
Yes, indeed, we have arrived. It's only taken us about 6 hours. We're halfway down the journey. How are we doing?
Good.
Say something interesting. What have we done today? And where are we?
We've just almost died from the heat and how long we've been in the car.
And our plan was to plant a church for the surf and beach community. And over the course of those years, having moved 28 times personally, having the church, a little kind of surf community that's exploring faith, having moved probably around about 10 times, we eventually arrived at this amazing building, which I'm going to show you right now. Check it out. Here it is. So this is Chapel de la Plage. So in 2014, the Catholics wonderfully came into partnership with us and allowed us to take over this building, to renovate it, to transform it, and to make it a space where the community can use it. So right now we do concerts, we do fashion shows, we do all sorts of craziness, and also use it as a church. So, here we are at the hostel. Now this is a space that we're utilising to do a ministry to the travelling surf community. Hundreds of thousands of surfers come here every single year, and now we've got a hostel space for them to stay, amazing staff that are sharing faith with them, and we've already seen a bunch of people become Christians. It's been amazing. Now in the winter time, what's fantastic is we transform this place into a training centre for people who are planting churches. So every single moment of this year, we're utilising this space. Let's check it out. This is Eugene. He runs the hostel. So, after this journey of planting this church here for surfers, we've taken the decision to change everything. Over the course of the next 3 years, we as a family, Reggie, Marnie, AJ, Indy and me, are going to be travelling around the world to help others plant surf churches. This surf church thing has gone viral, and right now there are 20 surf churches that have kind of erupted around the world, and we're believing that there are going to be thousands more. In fact, our vision is that every single surfer might have access to a surf-friendly church. We're dreaming that amongst the surf and beach communities, we're going to see Jesus do incredible things. So we as a family have handed on the local leadership of Hossegor to people here, to our local leaders, and now for the next few years we're going to dedicate ourselves to equipping, to training, to inspiring church planters to plant churches all around the world. And in order to launch this crazy new adventure, I'm going to walk 500 miles with a surfboard strapped to my back on a pilgrimage called the Camino. Okay folks, so this is the deal. For the next 35 days, I'm going to be walking 500 miles all the way from France through northern Spain to the beach at the very end called the End of the World. The idea is that we're going to pray for surfers. We're going to pray for surf churches to be planted. We're going to pray for Christian surfers around the world. And we're believing that something crazy is going to happen. Now, you can join us for this journey. Anybody who wants to come and join me to have a little bit of a walk, you can just comment on the thing below and say, I want to come and join you. If you want to support us financially as we launch into this new season of ministry, then hit the Just Giving link below that explains what we're doing and how you can support us. So really thank you for watching this video. These are exciting days for the Ellerington family ahead. They're going to be joining me for this walk, but for now it's time to put my best foot forward and start a 500-mile hike.
Amazing, eh? You see, one of the things that I'm so trying to find the right word, proud of actually, is these are Elim people. These are our people who are doing amazing things and doing amazing exploits for God. Now, I'm not that tribalist, you know. But I think there's something about when our family are taking some huge steps of faith in an adventure for Jesus. Now, that might not be your story. That's their story. The question is, what are you going to do with what God has given to you? What are you going to use? How are you going to use what He's placed in your hands? Now, you can follow the journey. That Richard is just over a week into that mammoth walk. I may, if I can squeeze it in, go and join him for a day or two. But you can follow the story and see what he's up to. But likewise, you can find out more and more about Elim Missions on our website and on our Facebook page. But let me just say what's going to happen now. So for Elim Missions, we are unashamedly about trying to reach more people for Jesus than ever before. I don't think it's right. There are still 2 billion people on planet Earth who haven't had access to the good news. So wouldn't it be amazing that over the next decade, we as Elim people begin to identify and send people to some of the most difficult and unreached people groups of the world? There are 7,000 unreached people groups, as the video told us earlier. Could we play our part in reaching some of those unreached people groups? We can, and we are doing it. We have missionaries who are working in Paraguay, reaching some of the Guarani-speaking people who until they went, had not heard about Jesus. So we are doing it, but wouldn't it be amazing that in the next few years we could reach more people for Jesus than ever before? Wouldn't it be amazing that over the next 10 years that we can train more people, the disciple makers, and send them out as disciple makers across the globe to make more disciples for Jesus and of Jesus, and send more people to the nations than ever before in our history? I think we've got an opportunity in the days that lie ahead to join together, to join forces, join resources, and say, Jesus, let us make much of you. Because it isn't about our kingdom, and it isn't about our flag or our badge or our sign. It's about the kingdom advance and about making Jesus known across the globe. And so what can you do? Well, there is a number of options. You can pray, you can give, you can go. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that. These are some of the programs that we run. MAP is a program for 16 to 25-year-olds. Runs alongside your studies. It's an opportunity just to engage in mission, and build community, be disciple, and get a flavour of world mission. The Academy is our year-long program for developing and training and sending missionaries that we run in Malvern over a 12-month period. It's not a full-time course, but there is a 1-week residential with various days built in throughout the course of the year. And then we've just launched a gap year. So this year we're piloting a gap year for 18 to 25-year-olds. It's based in Halesowen, and from next year there'll be some other things added into the gap year program. So if you know of people who are exploring some options, then why not explore Elim Missions as a vehicle and an avenue to go overseas and serve Jesus. So let me just finish with this. Isaiah said, "Here, then I heard the voice of the Lord asking, 'Who shall I send and who will go for us?'